Today I'm going to tell you about the inspiration, the scandal, the disaster and the dramatic resurrection of the famous Puccini opera called Madame Butterfly. A French naval officer called Pierre Loti wrote the novel Madame Chrysanthème in 1887. This was a partly autobiographical story about a naval officer stationed in Nagasaki, Japan, and his affair with a local woman named Kiku. André Messager produced an opera called Madame Chrysanthème based on the novel by Loti, and this premiered in 1893. The American author John Luther Long wrote a short story called Madame Butterfly in 1898. His story tells the tragic tale of a Japanese woman named Cio-Cio-San who falls in love with an American naval officer named Pinkerton. Long was fascinated by the idea of an East meets West romance and the clash of cultures. The extent to which the story Madame Butterfly was original and the extent to which it reuses elements of Loti's novel is hotly disputed. Long's story was adapted into a one-act play, Madame Butterfly, a Tragedy of Japan, by David Belasco, which Puccini, the composer, saw in London in 1900. Puccini was a successful composer after La Bohème and Tosca. He produced work in the Verismo realism style, which focused on the lives of the poor and the unimportant. He was deeply moved by the story and decided to turn it into an opera. He worked with librettists Luigi Illica and Giuseppe Giacosa to produce the libretto on which he'd base his opera. In 1903, Puccini suffered a serious car crash along with the rest of his family. This caused Puccini and his chauffeur to be seriously injured. Puccini's recuperation was long, painful and slow, and his state of health both complicated and delayed his efforts to complete his next work, Madame Butterfly. The late completion of the opera by Puccini severely limited the rehearsal time by the performers before the planned premiere. The original version of the opera premiered disastrously at La Scala in Milan in 1904, despite a strong cast of Rosina Storchio, Giovanni Zenatello and Giuseppe De Luca. Puccini subsequently revised the original version of the opera multiple times. In 1907, Puccini completed his fifth and final version, which is now known as the standard version. It soon became one of Puccini's most beloved operas and is considered a masterpiece of the genre. The opera is known for its dramatic score, its Japanese influence, a rendition of the Star-Spangled Banner, and is, of course, a tragic tale of love and betrayal. Puccini's private life was nearly as dramatic as his productions. He had numerous affairs, and this caused him adverse publicity as well as legal scandals. He was also heavily in debt due to his lavish lifestyle. Only his run of successful productions and money he borrowed from his friends saved him from bankruptcy. His affair with a married woman of Lucca, his hometown, Elvira Gemignani, produced a son called Antonio. Elvira's troubled marriage to her husband, Narciso Gemignani, another womanizer, ended as Narciso died at the hands of one of the betrayed husbands. Only now, shortly after Puccini's dramatic car crash, was he able to openly marry and live with Elvira Gemignani and Antonio. In 1914, Ruggero Leoncavallo, composer of Pagliacci, accused Puccini of plagiarism. The plot of Madame Butterfly goes something like this. In 1904, a US naval officer named Pinkerton rents a house in Nagasaki, Japan, for himself and his child bride, Cio-Cio-San. This name is similar to the Japanese word for butterfly. He is marrying a 15-year-old Japanese girl for convenience, until he finds an American wife. Butterfly is excited to marry an American and has secretly converted to Christianity. After the wedding ceremony, her uninvited uncle arrives and curses her for her religious conversion. The stunned, angry guests are critical of Cio-Cio-San and promptly leave. Pinkerton and Butterfly sing of love as they prepare to spend their first night together. 3 years later, Butterfly is still waiting for Pinkerton to return. He'd left soon after the wedding. Her maid, Suzuki, tries to convince Butterfly that Pinkerton is not coming back, but Butterfly stubbornly refuses to believe this. Goro, who arranged her marriage, is trying to marry her off again, but she absolutely refuses this option. The American consul, Sharpless, arrives with a letter from Pinkerton for him to read to Butterfly. Sharpless begins to explain Pinkerton is returning to Japan, and Butterfly is elated. But at this point, Sharpless struggles to finish reading the letter. He asks Butterfly what she would do if Pinkerton were not to return. Butterfly now reveals she gave birth to Pinkerton's son soon after he left, and asks Sharpless to inform Pinkerton, her husband, of this matter. Butterfly watches all night for Pinkerton's ship to arrive in the harbour, while Suzuki and the child fall asleep. Suzuki awakes to find Butterfly asleep. Sharpless and Pinkerton arrive at the house, accompanied by Pinkerton's new American bride, Kate. Kate has agreed to raise Butterfly's child. As Pinkerton sees that Butterfly has decorated the house for his return, he realises he's made a huge mistake. Pinkerton admits he's a coward and cannot face Butterfly, leaving Suzuki, Sharpless and Kate to deliver the bad news. A devastated Butterfly agrees to give up her child if Pinkerton comes in person to see her. She prays to her ancestral gods, says goodbye to her son, who she has blindfolded, and gives him a small American flag to hold. Butterfly stabs herself and dies as Pinkerton rushes in. Madame Butterfly toured major opera houses across the globe, conducted by Arturo Toscanini, including performances by Geraldine Farrar as Cio-Cio-San and legendary tenor Enrico Caruso as Pinkerton. Between 1915 and 1920, Japan's best-known opera singer Tamaki Miura won global fame for her performances as Cio-Cio-San. A regular performer at the Metropolitan Opera in New York City, Madame Butterfly was not performed between 1942 and 1945 due to World War II. Madame Butterfly would go on to inspire the modern musical Miss Saigon, which is based on the 1970s Saigon during the Vietnam War. In 1984, the controversial punk impresario produced a pop single based on Madame Butterfly. In the modern era, Madame Butterfly has run into further controversy. In 1988, David Henry Hwang wrote a play entitled M. Butterfly, which he said he challenged racist stereotypes in the Puccini opera, along with a wider Western ignorance about Asian culture. David Cronenberg adapted Hwang's play into an unsuccessful film in 1993. There is now a memorial to both Tamaki Miura, the singer, and Puccini, the composer, in the Glover Garden in the port city of Nagasaki, Japan, the setting of the opera. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving it a like and maybe subscribe to the channel. That way you can enjoy more of this content. Thank you. Click here for some more videos you may be interested in.